Thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm so happy to be here today. And not only being back finally here in Bombay after 2 years, and but also being able to moderate the session, and particularly this session, since like she just mentioned, that's something I've really been dealing with the last few years. My daughters are just 1 and 5 years old, so you know what it means dealing with. It's like a major job, basically. So I'm very happy and very grateful for all this, and I think it's also very important that we talk about this, not only because it's those are great books, and you can actually learn a lot about what it means to bring someone into this world and to bring life into this world, which I believe is probably the biggest thing you can do. But also because not only it has always been an important topic, but I feel actually that a lot of things concerning this are changing nowadays. For example, I just found out that like only 10, 15 years ago, science has started to look into, for example, fatherhood in comparison to motherhood. Like until now, it was the general opinion was that, if you take the father out, it's not great, but it doesn't make a huge difference for the children. Now we know much more and what it actually means biologically, and there's like so many interesting things that now come to surface. For example, which I just found out, is that if a man decides to be a father, part of his brain actually recalibrates or changes, which means like for example, there's a different hormone that is more pushed into his life stream, and which means that he, for example, has less the urge to go out and more the urge to like work on the nest in a sense. and the interesting thing about this is it doesn't even have to be the biological father. So if like a man actually decides to do that and be a father, his body is changing. And so there are like many things we don't know yet, and I think that's why it's even more important to talk about it. I feel like but it's very different because mothers, women in general, of course, have been fighting for a long time to, enter many parts of society they hadn't been allowed to enter for a long time. And I feel it's almost like like with I don't know the word in English, but there's like in this poem of the wizard where, you wish for something, but then you also get it. And now it's almost like I can see in my surroundings where mothers suddenly are allowed to do all these things, not only, but they are actually also supposed to. So you have to be now to be a great mother all the time, but you also have to have a career, and of course, like 1 month after birth, you have to be looking great again. So it's like, how do you juggle all these things? And whereas at the same time with men, it's a little bit different in the sense that, yes, I think they always had an easier time, but now it's a little bit more confusing because like there's contradicting things expected of them. Like at the same time, I don't know, they're supposed to be more involved. They want to be more involved as fathers. But at the same time, they should still earn money. No, so it's like I don't know how many fathers say like, okay, I'm just gonna stay home, look after the kids, you go work. I don't know how well that works. So I think it's a very important thing to talk about this more and more and to have a conversation about it. So I'm very happy and actually also grateful because maybe I can learn something today from you two. So I was, I'm glad I don't have to do the introduction, like the individual text. I wanted to start the session with a quote I read by this Polish poet, Anna Swer, which I found very interesting, and I wanted to know how if you can identify with that or how you can relate to that. She said, or wrote, "You are not going to defeat me, I say. I won't be an egg which you would crack in a hurry for the world, a footbridge that you would take on the way to your life. I will defend myself." What do you think about this?
Is she talking about being mother? Or
I think about having become or becoming a mother, yeah.
I totally agree. I think because once you become, I think nothing really prepares you for this humongous thing that lands on your lap the day you become a mother. It's all the way the media is and the way generations of women have been told, like motherhood is the thing that you have to aspire for, You marry, you have children, and that one thing that you have to do in life is done. And then you become this goddess mother who's perfect and who's the best thing, for her child. And also you look after your little baby and also tend to the home and hearth. And I think it's the biggest myth around. I think my daughter's here and she knows that. She asked me one day, did you really want me? Was I a planned baby? And this conversation actually happened. She's 30 now and she's sitting here and rolling her eyes, I know. But she actually asked me, was I a planned baby? And I said, the generation to which I belong, I got married at 20, had my kid at 23. I had a very thriving career as a journalist. And I don't remember even thinking about being mother or wanting a baby. Or I think I was too much of a kid myself. But when she came, I realized that it is nothing like what fairy tales tell you about. It is nothing like what your mothers and grandmothers and friends. It is hard. It breaks your heart in many ways. It is scary. You don't know what, you have this little thing in your lap and you don't know what to do with it. You yourself are ill-prepared for it. And around you, everybody expects you to be smiling and warm and cozy and 24/7 mother. I couldn't do it. And there was this day when, my BP dropped terribly, my blood pressure dropped, and I'd just come back from my work as a journalist, I was a news reporter, and a lot of running around involved in that. I came home at about 11, and my baby would start wailing at 11 because she was colicky, and then I would stay up all night. And my BP dropped, and my mother thought I was dying, and so the family doctor came, and he generally spoke to me, and he told her, please send her back to work. She needs to be more at work because she can't cope with this. And thankfully for us, we have the Indian family system. Many of us are blessed with, not everybody, but many of us are blessed with loving family or loving friends. Or they took care of her. So, but I decided one day that I'm not going to be defeated by this. She is somebody I adore, and she is somebody I brought into this world. But that is certainly not going to defeat me and keep me from becoming what I want to be, what I also want to be.
Rinki, how do you feel about it?
I agree and I disagree. I think my introduction ends on a note like this, protesting. And I wrote, I might read that out, that, it's time for women to be themselves. It's been so, I have to use my mic. Yeah. So, we've been really assumed, it's assumed of women that they can be only mothers, That assumption is so, culturally so strong, and the maternal instinct is so strong and so definitive that no matter how badly your children treat you, you cannot silence that maternal instinct. I tried it. When one of my children, gave me a kick in the teeth, I said, okay, I don't know you. But it's impossible to silence that. And as against that, I have a lovely poem, which I can read out by Tagore, who's one of our iconic poets. I could read it out at some point. But as I said, I agree and disagree with that.
Okay.
That protest is important for us to hear and maybe practice at some point.
Well, since you already mentioned it, maybe you want to read a short excerpt from your book, and then we can go a little bit deeper, because I thought maybe the audience wants to...
You want me to read at this
Yeah, if you want.
point? Okay. I have to admit, I'm an awful reader. I said that. Just one second.
Well, every mother knows how to be heard, no? So...
That's the one skill we learn really fast if you have to survive.
I have to balance my mic and my book. Okay. I am talking about this book, the collection. This anthology is a continuity after an enthusiastic response I received for an earlier collection I edited at a time I was passing through a particularly dark phase. My rejection as a mother was intimidating. I felt nobody wanted me, nor cared, least of all my children, who had become young adults overnight. An experience that can knock down the bravest of mothers. For a long time, I hung around like a solitary note after the orchestra had stopped playing, but there was no encore. It made me curious about other women, particularly mothers. Did they feel as lonely, rejected, unwanted as I did? I could end there, yeah?
Okay. Thank you. Yes, we can. It's good that you started with the preface, because there was also something that you mentioned in your preface, which I found interesting. You also said it in other words right now. You said socio-cultural practices in India have enslaved women for generations. What escape route is open to women in such a claustrophobic environment where motherhood rules? And I totally agree with you. But what I would find interesting to talk about is maybe, so it is true, but since at the same time mothers have such an impact on raising the children, why do you think they couldn't change it for a long time? You know.
We have such deep-rooted traditions and culture about motherhood. Like one of the Sanskrit saying is, mother and motherhood reign higher than heaven. And also in my book, Shashi Deshpande has really knocked out the myth of motherhood. How it really is, as you were talking about, what really in reality is motherhood. So, I would like my readers to read that, because, in every sense, it's been instilled in us that all we have to do is grow up, get married to the suitable guy, the most suitable guy, or maybe unsuitable guy, and give birth to a son. Not even a daughter, give birth to a son. That's supposed to be the prime duty of a woman in India. And it continues. In every sphere of life, it cuts across culture and I would say class and culture. So in that environment, what escape route do we have? We do not have any escape route. But let me read a little bit from, if everybody doesn't mind.
Sure.
Beautiful poem by Tagore, which begins, "The boy asked his mother, 'Where did I come from? Did you pick me up anywhere?' The mother replied, laughing and crying, hugging the boy, 'You were the desire of my heart.'" See, even Tagore has said this, that you are the desire of my heart. That's for the woman, that a child is the desire of the heart. So although it's beautiful, but
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of the picking up, finding you somewhere. It reminds me of what my first daughter said when we got our second daughter. It's like she was very excited about it for a long time, and then when our second daughter was finally born, she went there and she was like, "Oh, so you don't really move, you don't really talk, you just lie around." And then a few days later, she went to us and she was like, "Can we bring her back now?" Unfortunately, not. She left. She's like, "How long?" Yeah. How long? You'll see. Maybe at this point, would you also like to give a quick impression of your book?
Yes. This is the book that I wrote. It's called Legacy, and it's a collection of letters from parents to their daughters. I actually wrote this book it's 9 years now, and I wrote this book the year my daughter was turning 21. And it started with, like every mother, like I didn't consider myself at that time as, even now I don't consider myself as what society expects you to be, that perfect mother. I think that's the biggest myth around. There is no perfect mother, there is no perfect child, there is no perfect anything, but that's what we are told to be. But at 21, when she was turning 21, I had this really deep desire that I should leave something that would be a lasting legacy for her. And so, cheesy, it sounds very cheesy, and I knew that if I wrote that, I wanted to write a letter, and I started writing that letter to her. And after the first paragraph, if you have been mother to, if any of you in this audience, if you are a mother to a teenager, or have been a mother to a teenager, you'll know that children tend to invalidate you, smirk, and say, "What is this? Mom, too cheesy." So I said, let me not risk that. I want this 21st birthday gift to be really special. And so I decided, let me make this a bigger project. And because my work has always, my writing has always been, occupied or preoccupied with giving whatever support or inspiration or motivation to women, I thought, let this book also be something like that. Something that will inspire them. A book that you can pick up and read and find something, in it. And so I set about interviewing some really interesting men and women that we all admire from different walks of life. And I wrote that letter. And it was supposed to be a letter of inspiration for my 21-year-old, but I think at the end of writing that letter, it transformed me and it motivated me. And there is something, not just a daughter, anybody who picks up that book will see the wisdom of so many people who have been around for far longer than we have been and lived very fulfilled, contented lives. And that's what legacy is about. And
maybe can I also ask you, because you already mentioned it before you start reading, what I'm very curious about is, the title is Legacy, Letters from Eminent Parents to Their Daughters. And eminent parents says a lot, I think, if not sometimes actually famous people. So I was curious, how did you go about choosing the people for the book? Like, how did you
Because
make the decision?
I think that was a very personal call that I took, because as a journalist, I had watched the journeys of many, many people, some of who I admire immensely, and people who have impacted me in many ways. And also part of this book was written also after, when I wrote my first book, Leading Ladies, Women Who Inspire India, I interviewed Ilaben Bhatt, who's one of, yes, she just passed away, and, bless her soul. But I remember traveling to Ahmedabad to meet, she's a Gandhian, and she worked her entire life organizing women from marginalized communities. And she ran India's biggest trade union for marginalized women. And I remember this meeting with her, and she told me that, Sudha, you are all women from urban, big cities, and you are learned and you are privileged. And if each of you could do just one thing, just spare 1 week out of your 365 days, if each of you could do that, to go maybe to a smaller town, a village, or even just sit down and speak to the woman at home who's helping run your home, and tell her that it is possible for her to realize her dreams. If she has a child, if she has a daughter who she wants help with, because these are such marginalized communities and such underprivileged women, they don't really know where to go. So if you could do, spare 7 days out of 365 days, that would mean, their entire lives could change. And so one of the things I also wanted, so legacy is not just for women in this audience. Legacy is for anybody. And this book is now available in several Indian languages. And that's the joy of my life, that people anywhere can read it.
I think you also wrote in the foreword, like, if you are intelligent and willing to work hard,
yes,
you can make anything out of your life. Which I think for a lot of people, they probably never hear that sentence, and so it's probably very helpful. But I was also thinking, do you think this is changing? Do you feel like is it different from 20 years ago to today, or since society is also changing?
I think it is changing, but I also think it's not changing fast enough.
Yeah.
It is taking so long, and I think we are all running out of time. As a universe, we are running out of time. So whatever needs to be done, the pace has to be much larger. I think as women, several women in this audience today, as women, I think what can really help give our daughters a better world to live in is showing far more empathy, far more compassion, kindness. Reach out and help another woman to, pull her up. Every woman needs, no matter how self-sufficient we think we are. And I'm not saying I'm weak or, I need support in that way, but I need a sisterhood. I need women around me who will say, I'm there for you, and we can do this together. And all of this sounds cliched because it has been made cliched by the way we present it in the media. But I really, if I'm sitting here today having written several books and have, a 25 years of journalism career, it is because I had a mother who looked after my child. I had a younger sister who did her PhD with rocking my baby on her lap when, this was when I was, going about building my career. So yes, it takes a village. I think it takes a city now, not a village anymore. But it is changing.
Thank you.
And we can all help, fasten that pace.
Great. So maybe you want to give us a quick taste of it, and then.
So I'm going to read a poem that a woman I very, very much admire, Mallika Sarabhai. She was here yesterday, if any of you, were here. I'm just going to read a letter that she wrote to her unborn baby some 20 years ago. And it says, a lullaby for Anahita. And here it goes. The mother hums while rocking a cradle. She stops, peers in, and sings. Don't sleep yet, my little girl, for I have a story to tell. A long one perhaps, a hard one too, but a good one that you will one day tell your bitia. There is a world around, a world of fools and knaves, of frightened men and mindless women. They see us first as women, not people, not humans, not normal. Girls, women, bitches, whores, others' wealths, burdens, soon to be gotten rid of. They will say you're a curse, an unproductive mouth to feed. They'll try to starve you, burn you, keep you out of school. They'll try to keep you scared and away from knowledge and power. But they don't know the secret that I shall tell you. The world has changed around them too, but they don't see it. So blind with fear. But you must know that you can. You can work and fight and talk and dance and learn and sing all by yourself, without their help, without their permission, or blessings or guidance. And then, if you wish, you can stretch out a hand and take a partner who understands. Don't listen to their limitations. You can fly, you can jump, you can run, you can ride, because you're a woman in a world where we can stand alone. They'll fight, hurl stones and abuse, for you will be the light that breaks their power. They will starve you, try to throw you down, but you will know of the light inside that gives you truth and strength and courage, and above all, a joy that they could never give and never withhold. For I'm telling you a secret, Bitya, that you too shall pass on to all the Bityas. The future is ours, filled with joy. Take the light of the women of history and the few brave women of today to light the lamps, 1 million lamps for tomorrow's women who are free. I think that really puts it all in a capsule, and it is something that we can all remember when we raise more empowered, more liberated, more free-spirited women.
Yeah. No, I think it's also especially nice to, of course we have to always state what are the problems and, what hasn't worked in the past, but it's also, I think, sometimes very helpful to just focus on the things, the positive things where we wanna go, because it's very hard to drive a car if you keep looking in the rear mirror. So maybe sometimes it's just also helpful to say what do you want to achieve, and with a more positive spirit than just complaining about all the problems we used to have, because that doesn't bring you anywhere. I had this impression, Rinki, also when I was reading your book, that it seems like one of the hardest things a mother has to deal with is not only being a mother, but then also when the kids leave home. When you're not anymore a mother and not anymore as much a mother, I guess, or not as much occupied with that anymore. So I was wondering how do you have any tips? I guess I ask for personal interest because I'm already preparing. I really feel like now, I feel like when, at the point when the kids are born, that the process starts of them going away. Like it's like the first few months, but then they start walking, and usually, very often they walk away from you. So it always starts, you always pull them back,
Yeah.
So,
but does a father feel like that?
Sorry?
Do you feel what was known in the West as the empty nest period?
Yeah.
Which is related to women at that phase, which is when this book started.
Yeah.
This book started precisely when I felt like that.
Okay.
That as I read, that I was completely being rejected.
Okay.
Especially at home by my children who had learned now. They're flying out. They were going to fly out. I wanted to know, do fathers feel like that?
Well, I'm pretty sure they feel like that, especially since I think you probably even have to deal with it earlier, in the sense that, the very first months, and no matter how much, my wife and I, we made that decision very early, that was we would try to, be as involved, very much the same. I don't go to work in that sense. We have the same work. We're both freelancers. We try to share everything, and at night when, unless it's breastfeeding, everything, I would be the one who would change the diapers or whatever. So I tried to do all that, but at the same time still, of course, because she had let's say a 9-month time ahead of me. So I felt like, okay, of course, when in doubt, turn to the mother, no? So you have these moments when they're still very small, maybe 1.5 years or 2 years. I remember the older one, you come to the kitchen and say like, let's go out, and she's like, and then she's just turns to the mother. Or you come home, you've been away for a day or so, and you're really looking forward to the kids, and the kids have been, let's say, with a friend or a babysitter or someone. You come home, open the door, the kids come like cheering, running for you, and then they look at you, and then they look behind you, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they go back inside. And you're like, yeah, mama's not yet here. so like what I'm trying to say is that I think fairly early you are confronted with like a certain kind of rejection where you feel like, okay, I'm off number 2.
I think this happens much earlier in the West.
Yeah.
When you're waiting for your kid to grow up, and by the age your child is 16, no matter it's a boy or a girl, you are ready to kick them out of the house, in the West. I have a beautiful article in this by one of our matriarchs called Kamala Das.
Yeah.
When I started reaching out to, I pretended to have a little tea party at home.
Yeah.
And I called women who were about my age. Okay. Of course, Kamala Das was in Kerala. So some of my friends came, and I didn't have to say a word. I just said, I realized from the body language, from the way they reacted. I just had opening line. I said, I am thinking of a book on motherhood and about our children. So they were all very curious. They went back and they sent their pieces to me. One of the earliest person I wrote to was Kamala Das, because she was, I was very close to her. Her little piece, she became a mother at the age of 16. And her piece is a gem. She runs the full circle of what it was to give birth to a child at the age of 16, how unprepared she was, and the whole family was preparing her for that, momentous time when she was going to give birth. And she ends it by saying that today, when my children have grown up, if I meet them by chance at the airport or somewhere, I'm dying to hug them, but I hold back, because they are different people today. That whole circle, she puts it beautifully. It's a very small piece, but I would say, that's a very, very classic piece, where you know exactly where you stand and where you stood when you gave birth to a child and, when the child is grown up.
Yeah. So, so what, do you have any tips or suggestions how to go?
None. I think it has to emerge from ourselves. But, when I was doing this book, I did a little bit of research and I discovered that in the English language, the most beloved word is mother. And I suspect this is the same in all languages. The mother is, the most beloved and mostly used term, with a lot of affection and respect. And we have this famous film where, one of the actors says, "Mere paas maa hai." A very classic line,
Okay.
When one other brother is, bragging, "Oh, I've got this, I've got a house, I've got this, that." And played by one of our great actors called Shashi Kapoor, he just quietly says, "Mere paas maa hai." So I've used that line in my book.
Okay.
So that's how we feel about our mothers.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like, of course, they're like every culture and country is a little bit has differences, but like for example, India as a country is always considered the mother, but that is in contrast. Like Germany is always considered like a fatherland. No, so you say father to the country actually, but we also do have this thing, for example, which is maybe a bit old-fashioned still, but that if your mother is German, it doesn't matter where you're born, you'll become German. If your father is, then you're not necessarily. So it's blood. And the blood is supposedly just goes to the mother, because you can't trust, like
That's
who knows?
Okay.
It's really unfair. But it has a very still high standard for mothers. But of course, the flip side is that there's all this pressure and all this responsibility, and I think also what earlier in the talk we talked about the problem being that that you're not prepared for all the things that you have to do. I think a very important thing nowadays seems to be is that since now more and more, at least in the environment I know, more and more fathers are getting involved or want to be involved at least, and they're doing actually quite a bit more. I mean, I definitely do more than my father. I'm not sure if my father ever changed a diaper, but and it was okay in his time. It's not like I don't blame him, but like it was not expected of him. So I mean, nobody goes in and says like, I really would like to do this. So and but now I think the problem seems to be that even though very often men or fathers try to involve themselves more, and they're actually doing it, that at the same time it doesn't take that much off the pressure of the mother, and that seems to also have something to do with, they often say, like mental load. That's a very, very important thing. They seem to be talking about that, that the father is like the helper, the supporter, and the co-worker, so to say, but he's not necessarily taking the initiative, whereas like mothers are so much earlier trained, and also they know more things, and then it's like, okay, if you don't know so well about it, then you just tell me what to do and I'll do it. That's usually the relationship, which is fine if it works for you, but the problem is that it's still a lot of responsibility for the mother, because then you have to think about all the things, and the greatest load is this. I mean, everybody can go and bring out the trash, but the thing is to remember that you have to still do this and all that. Like that seems to be a major weight that is often on the shoulders of the mothers, and it's not so easy to stabilize that more. I realized that with my wife, also in the context, and I'm not criticizing it, but it's like we often realize that it's even if I want to do it, then we end up in this conversation where it's like she's not sure if I should do it because I probably won't do it as well.
Yes.
So it's like when there's this also perfection idea, what you said before, mothers are supposed to be so perfect, and they're actually very often very perfect, or more perfect, let's say, than the husband. But then the problem is, if they don't give away some of these responsibilities, then nothing can change. So like sometimes we actually argue about it, and I'm like, no, let me do this. And she's like, no, you won't go. And I'm like, but it's but then you have to agree on something. And I know friends also who have been like, for example, at some point they said, okay, so usually I take care of the clothing, the mother says, and the husband never did. And then it's like, but it's so much stress to always have all the clothing and the right size, and they, a few months later they bigger. So I don't want to have all that stress. So you take care of the shoes. So the husband said, like, okay, I take care of the shoes. I will always have. It's my responsibility that they have shoes. In Germany even worse because different time the year. So like winter shoes and in summer, and so you need a lot of shoes. And he did so, but then she wasn't so happy with it because they didn't look so nice and they were the wrong brand and so. But he's like, this is my responsibility now. So like you can't have it both. You can't like let me do it, but then again you complain about how they look. So but these really tiny struggles that seem so, I don't know, superficial on one hand, but on the other hand I feel like those are all the things we have to have more conversations now about, because if we don't, we just keep on doing the same thing over and over that have been done like that for generations.
Sorry, you say yeah. I think it is a lot to. I'm sure Rinki will also agree. I think it's a lot to do with women not learning that delegation is a possibility, and I think it's also because maybe we have seen generations of women do everything, and you're growing up seeing that. I really think one of the things that I really tell women. Of all ages, I used to, at some point tell my mother, but she was like, no, I like to do this. It's that learn to let go a bit and stop wanting to be perfect. There is this very, very high profile CEO of a very large bank that I know, a lady who's a dear friend. And she told me once that her husband was a wonderful man, wanted to help with everything with raising their children. But she said, I was this tiger mom, and she says that every morning the husband was supposed to send the child to school, dress the kid up, and pack the lunch and all of that. And she said, I found myself in my nightgown standing at the door, and when he would lace up the child's shoelace, I would say, no, this has to be done this way and not this way. And she says, and one fine day I realized the reason why I was so frazzled and so angry and so frustrated all the time was that I was trying to control everything. And one day, she said, my husband gave me a look and said, this is only a shoelace. Let me tie a shoelace. And she says, that day I realized that this is just so much waste of my time. I could be sitting on the sofa reading a newspaper or listening to music or just doing nothing. Instead, I was trying to teach my husband to tie a child's shoelace. So I think it's important that we give up this thing, of मैं करूँगी सब कुछ.
I have a little bit of good news in this.
Yes.
I find that with unspokenly, both my son and my son-in-law don't delegate that this is my work and that's. They're doing it all the time. which is a very happy situation for me. So the vibes are very relaxed. My daughter is very relaxed because my son-in-law is doing everything under the sun. And he's not saying I'm doing it because I want to be a good father. It's done very, very normally in a very spontaneous way. And so is my son. He's raising his youngest daughter in Spain, in Barcelona. And he's doing everything. Taking her to school, taking her, wherever. I think these are the little changes we need to really remember.
And it really improves, that the irony is, it actually also improves like not only mother's but also the father's life, because you actually makes you much more happy. You have a better relationship with the children. You have more fulfillment from that. You don't look for fulfillment just outside of the family, from like basically work often. So you don't need that so much, and it just everybody lives.
There doesn't have to be a
life.
discussion. It's just done spontaneously.
I think I'm sure that you did a great job showing by example.
You so much.
That is so. Yeah, I think that's really important. To not. There are homes that when I was growing up in a small little town in suburban Mumbai, and my closest friends were very conservative families where every Sunday the girls of the house would wake up very early because Sunday meals are very special because the father is at home. And so all the 4 daughters would wake up at the crack of dawn, and there would be this huge amount of cooking.
Ritual.
Yeah, rituals about cooking. What would we feed the men kind of thing. and the men would wake up at 10 o'clock to a king's breakfast. After which they would go off to do their thing, play cricket or whatever. In India, we all play cricket. So we all go to play cricket. And they come back home at 2 o'clock by when there is, a table creaking with the weight of so much food that the women have cooked. And then the men would sit down to eat. And then whatever is left. And I'm not even talking of some dark ages. I'm talking about the 80s, which is not like, so far behind us. So it is. And then there was my mom, where, she's very fierce Malayali and, matriarchal family. I grew up in a matriarchal family. And she did everything. She cooked, she did everything, but she did it because she wanted to. And she also made sure that the only brother, like we have 1 brother and 3 sisters, he never got any special treatment because he was a boy. So we all did everything. And he saw by example how it is to be in a family, what being equal is. And I think if that message is happening in each, I think it's happening with the younger lot, because we have raised those younger children and we have told them this nonsense will not do. You can't loll on the sofa and make your sister do something. So I think it's the early messaging is really important.
It's what they see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's it.
I think that's also such an important aspect of you immediately understand once you have children, and it's surprising actually that it hasn't been understood for generations that you live by example, and that's how you raise the children. Exactly. Because for the longest time it was more like you I don't know, like the husband beats his wife and tells his children you're not allowed to beat anyone, and
Yes.
it's like. Well, what do you believe more? Like the few words that were said at some point, or what you actually see and experience, and you see the tears, and you see the face, and you see all the aggression. So, and this is an extreme example, but in general, I feel like very often that is also one of probably the big pressures that is put on you when you have children, that you suddenly are so often forced to look into the mirror. So often of course, before you have like all these aspirations of being like a great parent, and then there are many situations where you like, I don't know, sometimes you can't anymore, you like get angry, or you say something wrong to the kids and you're like, oh, what did I say? And you realize that they hold you up to such a high standard because they will always let you know. They don't even have to say it, but you can tell if you don't, if you're not doing a good job. And there's, you can't say like, I'll go out for a break and come back in an hour. So you just have to really, really deal with that. And I think, that is also something that's very underestimated. I'm always very happy, to be honest, when I'm with the kids when we're here in India, because that's like a major difference to being in Berlin, where we're also staying, because it's the most children populated place in Germany, but it's still Germany. So people will just have a lower, like say, a tolerance for kids or people with parents, and it's interesting how you see like here, basically everyone has a way of interacting with the kids, no matter who seems to be, whereas in Germany, I have this, there's like two kinds, and you see like when you're fighting with your child, or like a parent fighting with the children, or there's some conflict, there's like either this person who has like feels sorry for the kid, and that's usually someone who doesn't have a kid. And the other who are parents, they're always like, oh, poor parent, I know how it is. Like, they always come to you and say like, oh, sorry, can I help?
Christopher, in England,
Yeah.
You don't get tenancy in a place if you have kids. But if you have a cat,
Okay.
That's
you're
okay.
more preferred.
Okay.
And that's typically English, I would tell you. I don't like kids.
Yeah, it tells you a lot about the standards, like
Yeah.
of the what the value you give to children, and that's really ironic. I mean, I had this friend who was on a bike in Berlin. I mean, something you would never imagine to happen in many other cultures. So she's on a bike with a small child, 2 or 3 years old, and the child really hates being on a bike and is like crying, and she's like passing someone in the park, and there was a man who just turned around and he's like shouted at her, he's like, "You're a bad mother." And she's almost fell off her bike. He's like, "You saw me like for 10 seconds, and you were like," But it all goes into that direction of like guilt, Like that's, I think it's a major thing that I feel like I often talk about this with my wife, that guilt is a major problem. That like lots of mothers very easily you can instill that guilt. Like
Yes.
like even if they're just she wants to go and they're crying a bit, and she's like, "Oh, maybe I should not go." I'm like, of course, I understand they don't want you to go, and so but you don't have to feel guilty for doing something for yourself. But any tiny thing mothers do for themselves,
They're so judgmental.
yeah, it's like, then you really have to fight that, I guess.
And this is across all social strata. Like if you're totally underprivileged or if you're immensely privileged. So I wrote this book called Devi Diva or She Devil, where women speak to me about what they do to survive all this rat race. If you want to have a career and be mother and happy wife and socialite, social being and all of that. So I spoke to one of India's foremost directors, a lady called Farah Khan. And she makes fun movies and she works with India's biggest...
Dancer.
Farah, yeah, she made some hugely popular movies with Shah Rukh Khan. Yeah. So she, for the longest time when she got married, she didn't have kids. And then they opted for IVF. And then when the children came along, there were 3.
3 kids.
Yeah, so she had triplets. And she says, suddenly my life was this, like I loved them to death. But she says that when a child comes out of your body, a guilt chip gets embedded in your heart. And she says, for the longest time, I never went anywhere. I never did anything. I didn't work. I didn't meet the people I should have met. I didn't party. I lost all my friends because, I was not paying attention to anybody. Till she says, one day her mother told her that, this is not how you deal with it. You can either use your motherhood as an excuse to not go out and do all the things that you wanted, or you just sit down and tell yourself that this is just a part of who I am, and there are other things that I'm meant to do. So you deal with motherhood guilt and go out and do all those things that you're supposed to do. And I thought that was such a good piece of advice. And I was astounded that somebody who's as immensely privileged as her had the same problems that anybody would have. She says, when I go on my shoots to, faraway places around the world, she says, I still call home to make sure that my children go to school, for instance, and that they come back and get food to eat and they do their lessons. So she says that is what motherhood guilt is about, that you're guilty to enjoy anything at all. You think that your only role is to raise those children, that being that you have given birth to.
You wanted to add something? Okay.
Question answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering because we get told here always when the QA is gonna start, and I keep seeing the 5 minutes. So I guess it's soon gonna be 2 minutes because I think it's been 5 minutes for a while. So I'm just afraid that we're not supposed, because otherwise the curtain will close and all the
we'll all be kicked out because we didn't finish on time.
Yeah. So maybe one last question from me before the Q&A starts. So what would you? Maybe I'll start with you. What would you say? Like, what is for you the difference between like motherly and fatherly love? What is your observation? Is it the same, or is there? Where do you see the differences?
It's a difficult question.
I know.
We are always presuming that mother loves you more. But in my case, I can be very personal and say, I am very privileged to say that my bonding with my father was much stronger. Maybe my mother gave birth to me when she was young. She was not prepared for motherhood. She must have been about 17 or 18. That I'm trying to analyze if that's the reason why, she saw like a sibling jealousy develop between me and my mother. Yeah. And unfortunately, none of you have read my piece, which will come out in the reprint, hopefully, where I've gone through this whole journey. And I very privileged to enjoy, though my father was an iconic filmmaker, he made time for us. And he shared things like, if he wanted to paint the house or the rooms, he would ask me, so what color shall we? And we shared so much. So I never, so maybe that was the reason why my mother felt left out, probably. I'm trying to analyze why she cast me off when I needed her most. When I was expecting my son, I was not allowed to enter my house because I had married on my own. I had run away and married. Yeah. So that was one of the reasons. But I am really, really grateful and in gratitude of my father, who was a role model. Really a role model for a father and also a mother. I mean, he would be the first person to get up. He would make his own cup of tea. I'm not saying that I'm talking of the early 50s, late 40s, at that time. Indian fathers were not like that. Absolutely not. And he came from a feudal background. Yeah. His father was a zamindar. So he used to tease me, I was very lazy. He would say, when I'm getting you married, I'll have to give you 6 maids to look after your needs because you're so over-pampered, So, yeah, I was really, please begin the Q&A.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, we have to start. The screen shows us. So, thank you. That, I mean, that is the good thing. I mean, it shows us that when you start much earlier, then, things change earlier. Well, thank you from my side. Now, we can open up this talk, and maybe someone has a particular question about.
I can see hands raised.
Yes.
Back, They should have the light on.
Hello. Yeah. A very good morning to all 3 of you. It's an honor to hear the views of a mother and a father, similarly, especially from another country. It might a little digress from all of you 3 what you have talked, but I want to ask you about a question on surrogacy. In foreign countries, even in India, it's prevalent that if you're not able to give birth through your own body, you tend to give your sperm and an egg to another lady and she gives birth for you. Is it very hard for... I have 2 questions, another one will come up, so sorry. Is it very hard for that woman to let go of a child? She has been impregnant for 9 months or 8 months or any of those span and then give it to the biological mothers or the fathers. What is a parental instinct which she has?
What do you think?
Yeah, if I can take it and just reply instinctively, I think it is a choice she has made, isn't it? So if it is a choice, I'm not saying that she will not be attached to that soul that she gave birth to, but I'm saying I'm hoping that since it's a choice that she has made, that separation won't be as as difficult as it can otherwise be. Having said that, I've heard of women who agreed to be surrogate and then later wanted to go back and want that child back. So I think we are in this very grey area legally too. I'm not sure how that is going, what direction it's going. But I would like to think that the women who are doing it out of choice have a better chance at, sorting it out in their head emotionally.
And interesting enough, the opposite thing also exists, what I found super interesting, that, sometimes, especially mothers, women who become pregnant very early and who maybe didn't want to or don't want to know about it, that they go through the whole pregnancy until actually the birth, and they don't consciously understand that they're pregnant. For a long time, they think they're just gaining weight and so on, and then they give birth to it, and when they present it with the child, they're like, it's not my child. It's like it's something that, because they're so afraid of what it means to be a mother, that they suppress something in their mind, and they're not doing it consciously. It's actually that there are women like this, especially if the context was not so great, if they were too young or didn't want to or they didn't know too much about it or And that there's actually these cases where you're like, what do you do then? Like if someone is actually a mother, but she will not accept the child at all. She will think it's not, I haven't been pregnant, because after pregnancy, it's like, see, like, it's not me. So not easy to deal with. But you had a second question.
Yeah, so sorry for the others. Another question, statistically, when you're pregnant for the 9 months, whatever you're doing, for instance, if you're doing alcohol abuse and everything, it has an effect on the child. We always see the bad effects of whatever happens in those 9 months for the child and for the mothers. Why don't we see the positive effects? For instance, if you're reading books to your own child, father talking to their own child, kissing the belly, it also has a positive effect later on when the child is born and in their growth process. Statistically, why don't we see the positive effects but only the negative?
Well, I guess that's like a broader topic. It's like, I think that's a general thing that has to do with the human condition of, just switch on the news here. German news are bad, but like here sometimes when I switch on the news, I'm like, oh, I switch them off again. But it's not because things are worse anywhere. It's just like the way sometimes certain news work. It's just like they don't have a news channel where it's at 8 o'clock in the evening and they're like, today someone saved a child, and there someone learned to read, and over there, someone was happily married, and so it's like death and despair. So I think it's something that we also automatically often turn to rather. So I'm sure these things are a lot around. I've heard a lot about this. I'm sure you must have heard like about when you're giving birth, like all this music, listening and talking to each other. Like those are things that are.
But I think we are getting there. You know, we are talking. I think this thing about whatever things that you do to your body during, so women are typically said, like I remember when I was pregnant. At one point, my then boss told me, he was saying it in jest, but it was like, I will give you your salary. I'll come home and give you your salary. Please don't come to work, because I was so big, and I'd still go to work. I remember I went to work till the last day. I did my night duty at the Times of India, and then the next morning I gave birth. So I was that kind of person, and constantly I would be told, why are you still at work? You please go home. You're pregnant, And I would say, like, I'm only pregnant. And so what? I'm only pregnant and it's only a baby and I'll deal with it. But now it's coming around. I think in many ways we are changing. Now we are told that fathers can have this amazing journey even at the beginning of pregnancy and through the pregnancy. And you're told about the good things that you can do that will help your child. But, new times, new ways, and it looks good.
Especially what you're saying about this like whole being active thing is much more. I think it used to be way more. I think you wrote also in that in your short story, like rest, just stay home, rest. Which is another word of saying like just stay out of society.
I think the gentleman wants to ask something here.
The fact that the laws were pretty different all these years. The maternal instincts, the paternal. Let me tell you one thing. The audience. We are some people are blessed to have both the sides of people alive till their late life. But tell me one thing: this birth, it's such a thing to be alive. That from where are you born and who are your actual parents? Till 6 months, you never know. You just see the face of the mother or the father, and you are supposed to believe by the doctors. You have said that you such a such person are born into such a great family. Are the Ambanis or the Tatas or the Gandhis? Forget about that. But let me tell you this thing: blessed is the man who has got both the mother and the father to look about. But why this attachment? You have to be detached, as you said. It's one state of being. Your duty bound, or you lose your parents between. See the foreign people who just throw out the children to be on their own, to survive on their own feet. What about India? The Britain has better laws all these times for the mothers who were pregnant. India, I'm afraid, didn't have any laws up till the 5-10 years. The last 5 years. Things have changed now. But see, all this, it leads to nothing. Your mother or your parent, but it's just, as you said, this also fades away. This also passes away. The good times, the bad times. This
Thank you.
attachment, you have to be detached from your parent. You don't have to stick to a body, even she has given birth, because you might fall into trouble the later life.
Thank you, sir.
And
We have been told to-
you need a father also. You need a godfather also.
Sir,
I'm
we have
very
been told
sorry.
to wrap up.
Thank you.
So, one last question. Thank you.
I'm scared of the maternal instinct.
Everybody
So
is.
I'm scared of the maternal instinct.
Yeah.
I was invited to an event in Gurgaon. The lady, she left me there in the middle of some unknown place. She's like, I have to go home. It's something urgent. And it was some courier that had to be picked up for her child. So I was like, she said, you take a cab from here. Mujhe pata nahi tha jagah. I said, no, I'll come with you wherever. I'll come to your house. And then I'll take the cab from there. And then I got to know that it was this, courier that her son wanted and all. And it's not like a chota bacha. He's like 16 years old and all. So I am single, very much single, and I'm very scared of being a parent myself. And I'm very scared of mothers on the whole itself, even in working places. Because I think that the minute it comes about their child, they don't see anything else. And I don't know how to navigate between that without looking as a very rude person or a very calculative person. But this is something that I'm always thinking about. So please, if you could shed some light on this.
I think.
Question, like how do you have
The question
good
is.
balance?
So what's your name?
My name is Apsara.
Yeah, Apsara. So what I really want to say is that this is like everything else in life. This is something that is a very personal choice. You can choose to be completely not fazed by motherhood. You can choose not to be a mother. I know there is a eye roll happening here from my daughter, but but don't be like the mother who's picking up that courier for her son who's 16. Probably doesn't know that it's adding up to be a lot of trouble for her, but it's a choice she's making. So don't, I'm saying that. But I'm saying to each his own, his or her own. Make your choices yourself. Don't be fazed by. There is no such thing as a mothering instinct. That is what you're doing. It's a learned thing. There is no biological evidence of a mothering instinct. There is none whatsoever. It is at best, Rinki. I don't know if you agree. Mothering instinct is that very deep personal connection and personal responsibility that you feel for that soul that you gave birth to. And to what level you will take that instinct is a purely personal choice.
But Akshara, one second. There are a lot of women I know today who are choosing not to be mothers, choosing their careers. I have many friends who have opted out of motherhood. And also, many of the mothers, like for me, for example, I wasn't a mother by choice. I mean, it just happened. So when did the instinct come? The maternal instinct is either you're born with it, it's something very personal, as I'm saying.
Yeah.
You develop it over the years.
Not everybody has it, and you don't have to feel guilty about it.
And you don't have to feel guilty about it.
Yeah. That is very important.
Yeah.
And it's maybe to wrap all this up. The balances that they often have in front of many courts. So like this balance that the two things that are on this. But on one side, it's freedom. On the other thing is safety. And it's interesting because that is like a thing that we keep talking about in many respects, always about in society. Every culture sees it a bit differently. But you can also adapt this to raising a child because you have to have this perfect balance. And it's very hard. Most people tend to have one or the other more. So you have to have that balance. And it's very hard to make that decision because you have to make it every single time. And if you, for example, they climb up a tree, how high are they supposed to climb up a tree? Because if you keep telling your child, don't climb up a tree, you will hurt yourself, you will fall down, which I hear sometimes, then the subtext you will tell your child all the time is like, you're not able to climb up a tree. If you climb up, you will all fall anyway. I know you don't have to, so you don't really instill confidence. But if you don't tell them at all and they fall, they'll be like, why didn't you tell me? So, so like
no winning, yeah.
How do you balance this? It's like there's no clear answer to that, but you'll have to figure it out. But you have to give both, of course. And I think that's one of the hardest aspects of being a parent. But I think that's why it's always good to turn to people who have a lot of experience, and even not only have the experience like we've shown today, but also have talked to a lot of people who have experience and then read about this and have lots of conversations about it. It's the only solution. So thank you so much.